So we'll call the meeting to order and see if we have any comments from the public. And we do not have any, so we'll move to item 3, which is consider an act on request for adjustments to or relief from the specific charges imposed by the district.
Nothing this month.
Thank you very much. Consent agenda items 4 through 9. These are administrative details that have to do with last month's minutes, financial reports, tax collectors reports, etc. Any questions, comments?
No, motion approved.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. None opposed. Thank you. Item 10, and it's 4:31. Receive and act upon staff information regarding the upcoming MCAD Board of Directors election.
So I reported last month that the first step that needed to be taken, which was taken by Metro Med, was to express interest in participating in the election. That was done. They did that. The next step was to then make a nomination this month of an individual. Metro also did that last night. They nominated Arthur Bredehoff as being the special district representative. There's no action to be taken on your part unless for some reason you want to nominate someone different than that nomination. And there's something.
I'm good with that nomination.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Arthur.
Thank you.
Keep up the motivated hard work. All right, that brings us to item 11, which is the SGRA report.
I would like to start with that one item. Y'all are aware that Jace Houston has resigned as general manager, and so there have been some questions as to what's at various going forward. So the following statement kind of gives you a little bit of heads up what to expect. First of all, we'd like you to know the board is extremely supportive of Jace and how he has led the organization and what he has accomplished over his last 12 years. Jace resigned to preserve the board and SRA from unwarranted negative publicity and scrutiny. The board did not ask, nor did they want Jace to resign. But they respected his decision to put the interests of the organization and customers ahead of his own. Importantly, they are entirely supportive of the decisions and the strategic direction being led by staff. The executive committee of the board will recommend to the full board at the regular meeting on June 22nd, an individual will serve as acting general manager until a permanent general manager is selected and assumes the position. Also, at the June 22nd board meeting, the board will engage an executive search firm, solicit resumes, and conduct interviews of potential candidates for the permanent general manager position. Senior management team is in fact committed to SRA. There's one planned retirement towards the end of this year that has been anticipated and is not anticipated to have a significant impact on the operations. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
Do you have a timeline
Timeline for what?
for recruitment and have a new one in place?
As soon as we have a contract with the search firm, we'll have that. We'll identify it. But right now we don't.
Maybe past practice is 3 months, 6 months, 9 months,
6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months. Okay, I just didn't know what the industry practice was. Okay.
There's no questions on that. We have a few more bullet items to go through. So there is no update on the infrastructure funding. We're continuing to work with a consultant. Nothing to report at this point. On the draft Woodlands Division budget, I just want to remind y'all that next month is when the MUDs will vote to direct their trustee how to vote at the August trustees meeting. You are only voting for the FY24 budget. You're not looking O&M budget. You're not going to be approving the entire 10-year project plan and all the expenses we laid out in April. It's only the 1-year budget that you're approving along with the R&R plan, which is $6 million. If you have any questions on the budget that we presented and we've talked about, we do have some accounting folks here ready to go through those. So I don't have any questions. I'll just keep rolling through.
Are we gonna talk about the 10-year plan, or are we only talking about 2024 budget?
That item was the, just the 2024 budget.
Okay.
On the next item, I see water lines. Did want to bring up a few things from the 10-year plan. So on page 38 of your packet, going through page 43, we did receive 16 questions from 2 directors, one in this mud, one not in this mud. And we've gone through and answered most of those questions. There are 3 questions we did not answer, items 9, 10, and 11. That would require additional funding and research to answer those 3. So the first one, item number 9, would be about $25,000 to answer. Take 6 to 8 weeks. Item number 10, it's about 150,000. It would take 6 to 9 months. And then the last item on 11, I think I have that right. Item number 11, as well as some of the other director comments, relate to basically predictive modeling. And we do not have a quote on the cost, nor the timing to get that done at this point. Some of the concerns with the modeling and some of the other tasks, if you will, is that we don't know if our data is going to be good enough to actually do anything to prove or to move the needle, if you will.
Just a comment on that. We talked about this at length last week at the Woodlands Water Agency trustees meeting. And I think it's going to continue to be a topic for a while, but part of the problem with these studies is, you know, if you try to take into account failures at other places, it doesn't, you might still be comparing apples to oranges because you don't know who installed it and how they installed it. And there's different soil conditions and things like that. And so I suspect there's going to be a lot more back and forth on this analysis paralysis to try and figure out if there's a way to significantly to predict failures and failure rates with any kind of reasonable accuracy.
And we've heard from some of the other MUDs, and we've seen some studies passed around that talk about pipe testing, pipe analysis, where they take the pipe and they crush it or they stain it or so on and so forth. And I was telling the MUD 60 board prior to y'all, to me, that's great, but it tells you what the pipe is, right? So it tells you this piece of pipe is going to last.
That pipe over there, not necessarily this pipe over here.
Right, but it's just the pipe. It's not the gaskets, it's not the coupling, it's not the installation method, it's not the soil around it. There's a lot of more variables besides how long is this piece of pipe gonna last. It's not welded pipe, it is joint pipe. So you have basically 2 pieces of pipe that come together with a coupling that has 2 rubber neoprene gaskets in there that hold it in. So you have a service life of a lot of different aspects besides just the pipe itself. I also do have, of course, Ed's here. I have Connie Curtis and Dan Hildebrandt, who, if you have any questions, we'll be glad to go through. Or should I say, they'll be glad to answer. At this point, if you have anything on the 10-year plan or the 8 months, love to hear it.
Yeah, I do. I've got a whole bunch. Appreciate the response to the questions. I would have rather gotten them in a more timely fashion rather than gotten them when the package came out on Friday. But anyway, it's I appreciate the responses. You know, I'll reinforce my basic position, which is I don't see the data here that justifies using a 50-year life as the sole basis for replacement. Okay. I think we've been lacking in data collection. We can't undo what hasn't been collected. We can only go forward. Just to clarify some questions on your responses. So item 6, so it looks like you mixed and matched data sets and you included data from the WWA breakage that would not be covered by the proposed replacement. Is that correct?
No, this is, okay, that's actually a typo. It should say does not include mud lines. We verified that when we were going through the actual slides themselves. So there's not Woodlands water data in there.
Can you send out a correction?
I will.
Okay, I mean, that's a pretty,
It is, because that
Big
was the question
deal.
when I looked at it, because the graph, like you said, we had the subset, well, we had the one that went from, I think, 2010 to current. Then we had the other one that had 2015 to current, so
are there any other known mistakes in the responses?
not that I'm aware of.
Not known.
None.
That one was.
Well, that one was caught beforehand, it just didn't catch in the final, so you're right.
Moving on to item 7. Your response is approximately half the leaks are due to third-party contractor damage. Okay. So that implies to me that half the leaks wouldn't be impacted by whether we do the line replacements or not. So the number of line breaks that we're trying to mitigate by doing replacement on a 50-year basis is half of what we've seen to date.
Rough numbers, I don't have exactly what they are, but assume half is responses.
Are we taking any action to minimize, or reduce future third-party breakage?
As much as we can.
Is there a program in place?
We do. We have the one call system. Anybody who's going to dig or excavate, they make a call to our GRP, and then it's passed down to the Woodlands folks. As we're driving around, we start looking and we stop them. For example, I know Woodlands Water had TACs come through. I don't know, a lot of various issues. They didn't hit any of our lines. Because every time we saw them, we would stop them, we'd say, you got a line here and everything else. So doesn't work all the time, but a lot of times it does.
Are we seeing any improvement in the one third or one half being related to third parties? I mean, if you go back 10 years ago,
We are.
we have the data to support that. Okay, I'd like to see that data.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay. 7B, reference TSD. TSD is not defined.
Technical services department.
Okay.
That'd be-
So that's part of WWA.
No, that's SRA engineering for.
Oh, okay, okay. So is that report available? 7B,
Is this the asset management plan?
okay, so that is the asset management plan that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah.
And TSD is technical services. I won't comment on your item 9 and item 10 response. Okay. I don't know whether this is what's the timing on this, but Kyle, I'd like to introduce a resolution related to the 2-year plan. Is this the appropriate time?
Is that what it is?
Okay, well, let me. Copies of the records. Proposed resolution is SJRA Woodlands Division 10 capital, 10-year capital plan as an insufficient engineering foundation to justify expenditure of capital plans to replace all AC pipe based upon a 50-year useful life. MUD 7 requests that the SJRA withdraw their current AC pipe age-based recommendation. MUD 7 requests that once a new permanent general manager is in place, SJRA submit a revised recommendation for including a condition-based program to determine the remaining useful life of the AC pipe. Once the program is established, it will be used by MUD 7 to determine future capital outlays. So that's the proposal for our MUD 7. I'd like to have a second, if I could.
This, so we don't have an action item on here. Let's see. On the agenda. Go see. the report. Let's see if there's anything else from here.
So even if we were gonna vote on this, I'm inclined to defer and wait and see if we get more information. So we talked about this last week at the Woodlands Water Agency. There's still things that we can do to hopefully get more information. And I'd kind of like to see what we come up with over the next few weeks.
What more information are we waiting on?
And pay for this $25,000 study or this $150,000 study or any of these other studies, you know, where we bring in third-party consultants and, you know, try to narrow down, is 50 valid or not? I think you make a good point. There's probably not as much information as we'd all like to have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions.
193 million.
So we're trying to get more information. To me, this, you know, this is not unreasonable. I just think I'd like to get more information on what additional analysis is available. And I don't, does Jace Houston have anything to do, I mean, that's not in,
He oversees the organization.
this is a detail way below his level.
Well, I'd be happy, you know, to make that amendment to the resolution to strike that statement.
I would strike that, and I mean, we can't vote on it today anyways, because there's no action item.
If board wants,
We could have it on the agenda next month officially to
Okay.
vote on this.
Okay.
I don't think it's gonna change.
We're still
Any-
gathering comments from the other MUDs, so
Right.
it's possible that we could have, I wouldn't say a different plan, but a different path towards data collection by the August meeting. And so the resolution may be a little premature until we can figure out a path forward. We've gotten what, 5 different articles on different ways to do pipe evaluation. Some of them need to be researched to see if they're even valid for our use.
Yeah, I find it surprising that the directors are the source of additional information gathering. And, you know, what we repeatedly heard from the River Authority was 50-year end of life and all needs to be replaced by 50 years. And we continue to push back to you guys saying, we haven't seen the data that supports that. And that's what generated the independent research. Directors started looking online to see what else we can find. And what we found is that there's a pretty good basis for using something other than 50 years.
And we're not disputing that, but it's been 1 month since the all-mud meeting when the questions were first asked about the 10-year plan. And so we're still gathering information at each MUD meeting and at the trustees meeting. We've gotten additional information from the director. And so we need to complete all the meetings with the directors to know where everybody stands.
So the 50-year,
Excuse me?
Where does the River Authority stand? Are
We
you
have,
open to using something other than 50 years?
we have a consultant that has recommended a 50-year service.
Oh, I missed that.
Excuse me?
Who did that?
LAN.
No, LAN specifically says they were given that by the River Authority.
We asked them to confirm it when they did the 20 years. We started with 50 years and said, confirm that 50 years is what we're looking for this area. Because they passed along a no longer report from the WWA that shows somewhere between 65 and 100 years for AC pipe. And so we asked them, we're saying, and this was, you know, at the time, us a lot of these questions as well, was we're saying 50 years, you're showing this report that shows different. Are we okay with 50 or do we need to change it? And their response is, given the local atmosphere, everything going on with the soils and everything else, 50 years is where you should be.
I don't recall seeing that in any document.
I believe that was in the AC. Was that in the second report? I'll double check to see, because LAN did a 20-year study on the entire water system. Then we asked them to do a more specific one just on the AC pipes to answer questions. I can get you a copy.
Okay. I mean, if it's the package, the small document you've sent out in the past,
I believe it
I
was.
believe it specifically says we were told to use 50 years by the River Authority.
I'll double check. I know I asked them that question personally, and I asked him, I said, are we using 50 years or is there something different? So I'll double check that report, but
So if you want to put this on the agenda for next meeting and go ahead and revise it to take out the comment about the general manager.
I'll let you make those revisions and the technically the item 20 is where you can formally request that it be on the next agenda.
Okay.
Here for a second. My name is Connie Curtis. I am the Director of Technical and Operational Services. So apologies that TSD was not defined in there for you. That is a group that I manage and I oversee. It is my group that would be making the recommendations for how to move forward. And so we are basing this on an asset management plan and studies that were done by third parties. The asset management plan was performed by Tech Services a handful of years ago. I was not here for that, but at the end of the day, it does say 50 years in there. Leanne, I do believe, did utilize that to define where to move forward, but they have had conversations with us to make some clarifications that they do agree with that. There's a lot of information out there that I can say you can dig up anything that says that AC pipeline can be up to 140 years.
Sure you can.
All that to be said, as Chris noted, there's lots of differentiations on where that is, what the gaskets could do. They don't really study that. They're looking particularly at the pipelines. We are focused on making sure that we're serving the Woodlands at the level of service that y'all expect. And that's at a very high level. And if the Woodlands MUDs look at us and say, hey, we want to wait for 70 years instead of 50 years. We're here to listen to that. And we're putting together what we've heard is that if 50 years is a conservative approach and that is the minimum amount, and we don't want things to start to break after 50 years, we're putting a plan in place to make that happen. If it's 70 years and y'all want to assume more risk, let's talk about it, but that could impact our level of service along the way. So we just want to make sure that this is a partnership. We're here to help serve y'all. And so we're open to the conversations. We just don't want to get into a place where the pipes begin to escalate and begin to break significantly more often than what they are today.
So do you have data on what the rate break is as far as breaks per 100 miles per year?
The break information that you have is the data that we have.
Okay, so I would say you have insufficient data.
We have the data that.
We have the data that we have, sir.
Right. And that's,
Here's
So-
here's the proposal that I made, I believe, last night to the Metro MUD. The town center area is a critical area of the Woodlands. The first pipeline that we have that is almost complete with design right now is through, honestly, the most commercial area of the Woodlands. I do believe if you look back at the data, and I'm coming off of memory on this, so Brad, you may be able to correct me, 9, I think, since 2015 breaks in that area. That's pretty significant when you begin to address the commercial areas and that you're down between, 18 hours or so if you've got a deep line. That's impactful. We want to reduce that. That's why that project was the first one. One of the things that we discussed is that, hey, we do need more data. So let's talk to our consultants and understand what is the data that we need to be collecting on any breaks that we have in the future, where we make sure that it's prepared so that we can do more modeling, so that we can be prepared to do that. And maybe that 10-year window, things change and maybe it does push to 15 or 20. We're not asking today for the money for the 20-year plan. We're asking for the construction of town center that is a critical area and to start the design of the next 2 projects. So that's where we are today.
When we think about service life of AC pipe, does 50 years mean that's when it starts breaking? Or that means, you can expect a lot of it's going to start breaking? I mean, I guess the other question is, if we have a bunch of pipe that's 45 or 48 years old, well, it hadn't hit 50 yet, so we wouldn't expect a lot of breaks in it. So how would we know, if it's about to start breaking?
I would say to some degree, and I'll be honest about this, we're being proactive. All right. So a lot of cities are extremely reactive. We're a wholesale provider that y'all are very dependent on for us to get the water to you. We're not an interlooped system in a city. A lot of cities have the ability to be looped together. And if the line fails over here, that's okay because it's served from a different way. That's not really how our system serves Woodlands water, and then water is delivered to the MUDs. Particularly in the downtown center in the metro area, there's actually taps directly off our lines, which is not normal in most of y'all's systems. So it even becomes more critical that our service not be interrupted. All that to be said, you asked the question of how is level of service defined. It could be when the pipe really begins to deteriorate. So the same as the life cycle on your car, you expect for it to have 100,000 miles before it begins to break. It could start at 75. You could make it to 200. What risk are you willing to take? What maintenance have you done along the way to keep it in shape, right? So that's the kind of conversation that we would have as well in our water system.
I think if you take the comparison with your car, you're doing inspections, you're doing maintenance. you're using that information. Only in some limited cases do you actually do time-based. And most cars nowadays have avoided doing time-based. They're all doing condition-based. Okay, and that's what we're asking you to do on your water lines.
So
Okay,
we can.
Collect the data.
Talked about last
collect the
night.
data and use that data to project when you need to replace the lines.
So. we
And
had
we've
this
repeatedly
conversation.
asked for data that says justify why you need to replace them in 50 years. And you don't have that data.
We don't have it and we can get it. So we talked about this once again last night at the Metro Med. There is a technology called Smart Ball that you can insert into the water line to try to figure out if there's cracks and things like that. It's expensive. So for us to collect the data, we can bring you all back how much it will cost to study and gain the data that y'all are looking for.
I think we should know that. I mean, seems reasonable to know our options.
So Brad, I caught you shake your head. Do you disagree with that?
No, I just feel like, you're asking for $193 million over the next 10 years.
Yes, sir.
And potentially a majority of that could be delayed 10, 15, or 20 years. That's a significant delay and significant impact on our ratepayers. Okay. I think people don't appreciate the level of scrutiny that this decision should justifies and the impact of delaying that. Well, you can argue, spending that money prematurely, I think is irresponsible. And what I'm trying to do is have data that supports spending that money at the right time. And I feel like that's what we continue to ask for. And to say we're using 50 years because that's what we're using is unacceptable.
I think what we can do is bring you back what it costs to get the data that you're asking for. We don't have any problem doing that. I'm happy to do that for y'all.
Well, I think you've got to be careful that your answer is, we would answer your question, but it'll cost you so much you don't want us to do that. Okay. And as owners of the line, I would think it's in your best interest to know the condition of those lines. I would think the information we're asking for hasn't been gathered in the past. It should be gathered going forward, and it should be part of base business. Okay.
I think we can continue to discuss that. Let us bring you back what that looks like. And in order to pay for the studies, it does get passed along to the MUD. So if the MUDs are willing to pay for the data, then we will collect the data. If you're not, because it's built into the rates,
It's not in the budget.
it's not in our budget.
Proposed.
We can begin to build it in.
And if we can get reasonable expectation that we'll have better data, then it'll be worth spending some extra money on the analysis. So.
Right.
That's fine.
Thank you for your feedback, Ralph. I appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
So I'll hold this till item 20. Okay.
Let's
Bear
talk
Branch.
about Bear Branch Dam. We're close to putting out an RFQ for engineering services for the rehabilitation of Bear Branch Dam. I think it is out. Yes, that's right. So we should have a consultant on board by September at the latest and be moving forward with preliminary design. We are still waiting on the spillway configuration, the revised configuration from the consultant that is doing the Bear Panther Branch model project. The low flow vault project is complete. We originally had a kind of a ballpark estimate of around $75,000 in the budget to do that. Between the construction, the engineering, and the cost of the vault lid, we're under 30,000 for that project. Bear Branch monitoring report is in your packet on page 37. And then let's see. When would you like to go ahead and talk about the Bear Branch FY24 budget? Do you want to do that now, or we do it as part of?
Fine.
What?
I think that's it. Continue the project plan. Jamie's here to talk about the budget.
So, Sandy?
So I handed out a packet that looks like this, the budget is the first page that has draft watermarked across. To begin, we kind of start off with the ending. The impact to the bottom line is the capital contributions. So as you look at the budget for fiscal year 24, the new capital contribution for fiscal year 24 was $900,963. That, if you compare it to last year, is just under $200,000. The rest of the data below that is how we support getting to that $901,000. So as we go through, I'm not going to hit every line item. So if you have some questions on anything, please ask. But I'm going to
Are
hit,
you looking at this?
yes, I'm going to hit the highlights. For the most part, this budget is very much like last year's budget. It is more of a typical budget for your operations and maintenance. One of the major changes you see in maybe on the O&M side is that because of the additional property that we took ownership of in the last year and a half, we have seen more clearing in that area than we have previously because of that being unmaintained land by SGRA at that point. Now that we're maintaining that additional area, we are exceeding the current year's budget. And as we build up more data and historical trend on that, we will have better information going forward. But we did increase the budget to cover not only the overage year to date on that, but also to get us to the end of the summer. So you'll see for next year, we did address that in the budget. The largest thing that impacts fiscal year 24 is it's in the project plan. So there's more details in your project plan, but it's the spillway and the soil cement repair projects. That is the $847,000 project that you will see under dam rehabilitation. So that lines up with the rest of the project plan. If you flip over to the back side of this sheet, you will see a cash source being carried over from fiscal year 23. We are estimating being able to carry forward $468,000 in the current operating fund to help us fund next year's activities. So with that,
Is that already designated money that just isn't going to get spent this fiscal year?
majority of that is the pre-funding of that project that we are rolling into fiscal year 24.
Okay.
Should I have any questions? That is the budget. I guess I should highlight this page right here is the pro rata distribution of that $901,000. This year, y'all's portion is the $73,619. In comparison, last year was $57,000.
So your 6,000 in interest, is the budgeted interest? Is that based on some sort of declining scale? I mean, right now, money markets are paying 5%. I'm guessing tax pool is somewhere in that ballpark. Or is it-
So
You might actually earn more than 6,000.
it was just an estimate based on current earnings and projected out. So, and it is, we don't want to be
Overly optimistic.
overly optimistic, so we did curve it down a little bit, just so that we don't say, hey, yeah, we're gonna have all the interest earnings, and then
Right.
come throughout the year, not have the funds to do projects we need.
Thank you. So that takes us through item 11. Item 12 is receive update regarding status of the Bear Brand.
This is the modeling project and big drainage project that MUD 67 indicated.
Okay,
That you all are a partial funding participant. Consultant is working on, he's developed the existing condition drainage model. And he's running various scenarios to check it against actual events. So they're about 30% complete on their project. And we should be seeing, we have seen some of the existing condition models what they've shown us based on looking at computer generated information. But we do have a meeting coming soon and we'll have more information in Charles next meeting.
Thank you. Any, so that brings us to item 13, updates on SGRA led Spring Creek detention study. Anything there?
Dan's gonna cover that.
Just real quick, I did want to highlight, next week on the 27th, we have an all-mud meeting for the wastewater strategic plan, so something else that we've been working on and I've been passionate about it, so want to make sure you're all aware of that, encourage you all to participate.
Capacity basis.
We will be going through that capacity optimization analysis that's been going on. Regarding Spring Creek, not a whole lot to update, but some good news is we were contacted by the solar company, and they reached out to us. No agreements or anything like that, but we would like to continue discussions with them on the potential of coexisting in some manner out there with the solar farm, the detention. So there will be additional discussions, hopefully set up with them to work through that. So beyond that, I think we had a very successful public meeting last month here in the Woodlands Township. I think a little over 100 people or so showed up. So, you know, I think that went well. And more to come hopefully on this discussions with the solar.
Thank you. Any questions for Dan? Item 14, receive attorney's report.
Well, legislative regular session thankfully ended on the 29th. A lot of the remainder bills that we were tracking did not pass, as is typical for the legislative session. Some bills we talked about in terms of issues on using public funds to lobby, that bill failed. The bill that would have required for directors to be landowners and not just residents of a district, that bill failed. The bill that would have allowed for some more flexibility for remote meetings, that bill failed. The bills that I think on property tax reform, where there were a number of bills that were vetoed that had nothing to do with the subject of the bill. We were tracking some bills, the omnibus bill that did a lot of just general cleanup in the mud space, the PFC bill that dealt with public facility corporations and put some more stringent requirements on those before they could flip multifamily taxable properties to non-taxable. Those did hold up and were passed and were not vetoed at the last minute, so that's good. There is still there has not yet been resolution on property tax relief and on school vouchers. So there's already been one called session. There will be more. And right now, it does not appear that the property tax relief options would impact my districts. So it's all focused on school district taxes right now and reduction of school district taxes, potential $100,000 homestead exemption for school taxes. So we'll continue to watch that because the first iteration of the House bill could have impacted MUD valuations and tax revenue, but the current iteration does not. But anything can happen for the session or special session. We will have our usual comprehensive summary of the bills that were passed and one that did not pass that impact our MUD clients, and we should have that finished up in the next week or so. When it is finished, as we've done the last couple of sessions, since we've had the Google Drive, is Shelley puts that on the Google Drive for y'all. That's all I have with the attorney's report. Happy to answer questions if you have.
Any questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Item 15, consider an act on Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District Phase 3 subsidence study.
Hey, we received, or you received a letter from Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District, page 44 in the packet. Basically, the letter requests, informs the users that they are moving to phase 3 of their subsidence study. And the letter requests assistance potentially with funding and possibly locating sites for their cores. As of yesterday at the SRA GRP meeting, Jim Spagner with Lone Star suggested that they weren't as worried about looking at funding right now as they were looking at trying to find the sites. And I think Ed had mentioned in the meeting that there might be some possible sites to consider. And that was the kind of the end of it.
So nothing to act on there.
Probably not. at
Next
this
month,
point.
August.
Probably not.
These would be SJRA sites or WWA sites.
What, neither? Well, if you look at page
Yeah, I
46,
saw that, yeah.
there's a map that kind of identifies a general location of where they might put some kind of spread out cores, just to get kind of a spread of the county itself. But those are not actual sites. Those are just
Yeah, yeah.
general areas. So yeah, as far as the sites, I think Spegner mentioned that he had 2 sites apparently. I don't know where, he didn't mention where those were, and then
We're looking at 2.
on that.
And we'll check that one off until further notice.
Okay.
So bring us item 16, general manager's report.
All right, I just have a few things tonight. One is just wanted to let you know, Gene and I sat with Arthur Bredehoff and Janet Jennings Doyle, the chief appraiser for MCAD. And they presented the proposed 2024 budget for MCAD. Just a couple of highlights was within the budget, or the bigger items were a new software. I believe MCAD software is about 15 years old, so they're looking to upgrade the software, as well as some increased funding for additional ARB time to review the increasing protests that they've seen over the last few years. It's apparently pretty significant. So no action to be made on that. Just wanted to share with you. I don't know if there's anything else to add. Okay. All right. Next item I had was on a couple of the MUD agendas, there is an agenda item for which there is not on in your for MUD 7 to consider and act upon a resolution concerning estuary water management. A few board members, specifically originated with Bob Lilac from MUD 1, started creating a resolution a month or so ago as the legislative process was going through what it was going through. And over the last few weeks, there's been additional revisions to that. I can tell you that, and there is a copy in front of you in your that was handed out that you can kind of read and see what the various items were. Billy, did you?
Is that them over there?
It should be there. Oh, yeah, there's, I can see. Metro and Scene 1, for which it was on their agenda, agreed to work with the GM to finalize the wording on this, and then authorize their board presidents to sign the resolution once it's complete. For those districts like you that it's not on the agenda, the thought was that it would be placed on the July agenda for final review and adoption and further action at that point, if you so choose. The idea would be that this would be presented or sent to Lone Star, SRA, or the township, and potential media outlets.
So you drafted this and Brian, you approved it, or?
No, it was drafted by board members, originally,
SGRA,
sorry,
at the SGRA?
no, MUD board members. From, I think, 5 or 6 different modes.
Have you reviewed it, Brian?
Uh,
Sort of.
So the only thing I looked at it, in terms of was, did it deal with mud policy as opposed to, politics? I'm not, speaking to the, to the verbiage or
Mm.
the, wisdom or not wisdom. So, and it's not on y'all's agenda today. If y'all want it to be, we can put it in the future one, but it's really just, informational at this point, not
Yes.
for deliberation.
Are you looking for any feedback?
Yes, if you so choose, give me feedback, and then if you want to put it on the agenda, we need to document that and get it on the agenda for July. There was, can't remember, 3 or 4 or maybe 5 MUDs that have it, maybe 4 MUDs that have it on their agendas, I think. And then the rest don't at the moment, just because of timing of when it kind of came about. Last Friday.
I mean, is there an action they're trying to drive? I mean, the 2 resolutions seem to be unrelated.
What 2 what are you talking about?
Therefore be it resolved. It's about affirming Jay's, and then further be it resolved.
Well, it's a senseless litigation. Well,
Well, again, this isn't for deliberation.
You should, I asked me one feedback and,
Yeah.
Not right now,
oh, okay.
just to share it with me.
Okay, so we can't discuss this, is what you're saying,
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry about that, yeah. All right. Next item, just wanted to point out, Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District accepted the resignation of their general manager last week. So that marks essentially year 2023 that the GMs and leadership of the 3 major water agencies in Montgomery County will all have new leadership, WWA, SGRA, and Lone Star.
do we know why that person resigned, that Lone Star general manager?
We do that. I think what was reported was more time with family, focus on that, as I recall.
Anything else under your general
I
manager?
do, sorry. Just wanted to point out in the report that there are a couple articles. Wanted to point out some service tenure. Today is Mike's 19th year with WWA. We also have Dan Kennard, who in May surpassed 44 years. So we've got that, and then we have a letter of appreciation for some employees and their interaction with some residents, which is always good to hear. I did want to take a moment to, as I started last month, I'd like for John Geiger to talk a little bit about what we're doing on the public outreach campaign and the strategy. John?
Evening. Appreciate the opportunity to touch on some highlights from last month as far as communications. Page 58 in your packet, there's a communications report. We just exited the 2nd quarter of our strategic plan. The focus there was on water quality. The 3rd quarter is going to focus on water conservation. Some figures have folded up halfway through the plan year that I think are encouraging. I'm happy to report that we're seeing a major uptick in page views on our website, both compared to the last 12 months and then the 5-year average. So really, I think gaining some steam. Our campaign seems showing signs of success. We want to keep those numbers pushing up, and website is one way to gauge success, just one. And it's still early, but we'll keep tracking that, and again, hopefully the people numbers up. Our email, our weekly irrigation recommendation and newsletter, that's another major tool for us. Some encouraging figures there. We've seen our open rate increase by 11% over the last 12 months. And our click rate has increased 50% over the last 12 months. So that's where when folks actually open the email, we know they're engaging with it because they're clicking on elements inside of it, which then takes to our website or social media or other sources. So that's good. We want to be excited to receive it and want to see and engage with it when they do. Major marketing outlets for us continue to be Community Impact, where we have print and digital advertising, Chronicle, which is all digital, and then Woodlands Community Magazine. So there, each month, we have a 2/3 page ad. Almost always get an article as well. The current article is on CCRs. That's concurrent with our distribution of those to our customers this month. Next month, watch for an article on our success with the water loss reduction. And August will be a water conservation focus. Social media, we've started building towards this infrastructure renewal campaign. So if you turn the page 59, the bottom there, you'll see just some examples of some of the material we're putting out on social media to just start increasing appreciation for our critical infrastructure. And then last note on infrastructure. So we just received this afternoon the 5 proposals for that SRA received for communications consultant. So we're going to be reviewing those. Currently, we're going to be sharing our input with SJRA, going through that process. And down here, I noted early toward July. That's actually going to be more likely late August, the earliest time we would have that firm. Any questions?
I missed this when it went out in the email, apparently. This would be a good thing to have in our packet with all these other news updates. Our MUD 7 district, our MUD 7 2023 update, I don't think made it into our packets. Just for future reference.
Did our update generate any phone calls, responses, emails?
You guys had a 60, right around 65% open rate. That's really good. Wow. So the industry average for a public agency on an open rate would be low 40s. So people want to hear from you. They open the stuff we send them. So that's great. Remember, it also lives online.
Yeah.
On your MUD page, so you can always find it there.
But it didn't generate any questions or feedback or?
Nothing came to me directly from customers. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
I'll add to the GM report.
Thank you, sir.
That's the items.
Can I ask you a question in your GM report? Talk about the drainage structure failure in Gosling. Where was that in Gosling?
Is
It's just south of the,
pointed to it last month.
I can't think of the development's name now. It's right before the bridge, the new bridge,
Oh,
That last
okay.
ditch.
Going towards Creekside.
going towards Creekside.
On the right. Yeah.
I do have some pictures. I meant to bring those as well.
We crossed last month, but
We did bring, we did.
sorry.
Okay. So the very end of MUD 7.
Yeah, right in this corner.
Okay.
There's a drop structure that completely failed.
Thanks.
Item 17 is the Woodlands Water Agency trustees report. I think we've covered just about everything.
One item was just to point out that the trustees did authorize me to write a letter accommodation for Jace Houston. We are drafting that at the moment, and I plan to read that present it to the SRA board on Thursday at their board meeting and read that to them. We already talked about the AC stuff, which is the other kind of big item there.
Thank you. Brings us to item 18, if we have any closed session items. Okay. So, yep, 19 as well, reconvening. Brings us to item 20. We have a couple items to put on the agenda. Brad, you want to make your?
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is bring this proposal with a correction that says halfway down, something that starts MUD 7 request, strike the part that says that wants a new all the way through the comma, and it just reads MUD 7 request SJRA to submit a advice. So you've got somebody's got a copy of this.
I
And
mean, is
then have this on the agenda for July.
Okay.
To discuss.
that okay, Shelley? Can he just give you this with that line or those words struck out? Okay. Thank you. And then we're also gonna, or I would like to also have this resolution concerning SJRA water management on the agenda as well as recommended by Pete. Anything else?
So will this go out from individual MUDs? Or is it coming from the WWA?
It will be signed by the presidents. So far, the three districts, or two of the districts that it was on the agenda. And I expect the next one, or all of them to do the same thing.
So they'll get 10 copies of it each from each
No, there'll
MUD?
be a signature line for each of the 10 presidents.
Okay, so
Same copy.
it'll be held up pending all MUD reviews.
It will be presented at your next meeting in its latest form for approval.
Right, but some MUDs are reviewing it this month.
But they're not voting on it.
They're not voting on it. All MUDs are reviewing it this month.
Well, we're not.
But, well, you have it in your hand, but you're not acting on it. So the MUDs that has it on the agenda will be taking action to wait till everyone else is ready to go.
So if anybody wants to make wording suggestions, additions, subtractions, would you like those, an email directed to
You
you?
can send them directly to me. Just give me the feedback you have. Sure. I'll take that into consideration. Absolutely. And then what I would expect is that by then, by the July meetings, that we'll have the latest and greatest with everybody's comments addressed. And then the MUDs that haven't had it on their agenda will be able to act on it. And we should be able to finalize it real quick. At that point.
Do we have any more background on what's driving this? It seems like there's two different objectives, but I guess we can't discuss that. It's
This
this,
meeting's over. I'll share that with
okay.
If there's no further items for placement on future agendas, and once meeting's adjourned.